Hey everybody, it's Tad here with the Attitude for Gratitude podcast, brought to you by 2218, and you know I'm here with my best buddy,
Tim W.
So I hope everyone's having a good night, and we want to thank you all for tuning in. Tim, you want to give the promo?
This is, again, Tim, and we're coming to you live from 2218, Attitude for Gratitude. And what I would like to do is just put this out there that if there's donations, please feel free to reach out, and you're able to find us through YouTube right now and through Facebook. With that said, please write in any questions that you would like. We will try to get to everything, and we will also shout out names if you'd like. Personally, you can reach out to Tad as well.
Absolutely, and this is an interactive show, so it doesn't work interactively if you guys don't interact. And don't be afraid to smash that like button.
Smash it.
Yeah, and share with your friends and tell people about it, you know, all that good stuff. And if you want to reach out to me or Tim about the show, I am Tad Ackerman on Facebook. If you have ideas, you have guests that want to be on the show, just hit me up. Otherwise, you can hit Tim up at
Tim Warren on Facebook as well. And we are working on getting some other venues, but for now, those are perfect to reach either of us.
Absolutely. So tonight our show is going to be a little bit about spirituality and psychology. No big deal. No heavy subjects or anything.
Yeah, right.
And we're going to introduce our guests. We got Jason B. and Rusty on the show. Jason, you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi, this is Jason B.
Rusty, you want to say hi?
Hello, this is Rusty H.
You know, I also wanted to make this clear, too, is I am an alcoholic and an addict named Tim W.
And I am a drug addict, and my name is Tad A.
Thank you.
So let's chop it up.
All right. The time of the hour.
So, spirituality and psychology. I mean, that seems pretty broad and vague.
Those are kind of your two guys as experts, like expertise. Like Rusty loves to talk about the brain, and you like to.
I'm just thinking like where to start with that. You know.
Oh, it's a real teeny subject, so wherever you feel most comfortable.
Right.
I guess where would I want to start? Spirituality. I would like to describe probably what I would say that is spirituality. I would say the inner self or inner man or inner woman. You know what I mean? Your inner world. And the same thing with. I would tentatively say the same thing about psychology because it is the study or maybe observation of the internal workings of the mind, emotions, aspirations, etc. I'm sure Rusty could speak more on that subject than I could, but to define what it is, I would talk about it as the internal man, you know. And to further talk about it, I've heard a lot of people, with their opinions and their ideas about it, and I guess I would just have to say that that's mine, the internal man. And to me, spirituality is something that I pay attention to quite a bit, what's going on inside of me. Do I do that all the time? Absolutely not. But I do think it's important to pay attention to what the mind is thinking, pay attention to what you're feeling, that sort of stuff.
Rusty, you want to touch on it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I guess spirituality is kind of hard to define, right? It's kind of like love. The human aspect, right? The flesh. I kind of look at it this way, I guess. I realize that if you believe in a spiritual human being and then a flesh human being, right? I guess I kind of look at it as, the flesh I have is the reason for the desires for everything I have, whether it's drugs or, sex or anything else. It's my attachments to things, right, that seem to make me happy and satisfied. But and so I look at the spiritual aspect of a human being as a part that you can't see. You rarely get to talk to a spirit of a human, right? Almost always, it's really you're talking to the ego, of course. And ego is another thing that's severely distorted. You hear people say things like that person has a big ego. Right? If you really study ego, and you hear that in all aspects of discussions on it, even professionals, it's kind of like saying you have a big subconscious. It really just doesn't make any sense. It actually makes no sense whatsoever. There's nothing large or small about it. Again, they're using their human parts to explain it, but I guess I'll say this. I'll just explain my spiritual experience and then say where it changed me forever of realizing what I am as a human being, and I'm more than just flesh.
And kind of tie that in with your recovery and where that journey took you with spirituality.
What changed me? I have not had a thought of alcohol or drugs since the day it happened.
Perfect.
I mean, not one thought, not a fleeting thought. And prior to that, I had been in recovery for some years, and I always desired a drink. Maybe not every day, all day, but it was still a part of me that I could not shake.
It was always there.
And I assumed from listening to everybody, or not everybody, excuse me, listening to a lot of people that was how you had to live. You're sober, it's going to be a long-term maintenance struggle, and hope you don't drink again. And it's very difficult to believe people when they talk about the spiritual aspect of a human being when you haven't seen it, tasted it, smelled it, right? There's no evidence for it.
Correct.
So for me, and Jason was a huge inspiration in my early recovery. In fact, in my spirituality, I don't think I would have went down the road I went down if it wasn't him kind of influencing me. He has a good spiritual background, but so I assume when people talk about a spiritual experience, they're just talking about a moment of clarity or an epiphany or something to that effect that altered the way they think a little bit. But here's what happened to me. They say God helps those who help themselves. One of the biggest problems in my life since childhood was I had massive anxiety. It started early in childhood, and I could not shake it. I had that emptiness inside that we all talk about in recovery. Some people have it in sobriety, right? That pit in your stomach. Really, it's really just fear. I mean, ultimately, if you look at it, it's fear. I was afraid of everything.
Right.
So it got so bad, I even got agoraphobic when I couldn't leave my own home. And that's a whole nother story. But my panic attacks and anxiety were just debilitating. Everything you try to do, you try to take a class, right? You can't concentrate because you're so terrified. It really distorts and limits, your life quite a bit. And I had sought out psychology for it. I paid one psychiatrist in Sacramento like $200 an hour. And after a few visits, I realized this is probably going nowhere. In the sense that he even said, in order for me to help you, it'll take years, and we might get rid of 50% of it.
At $200 an hour.
Right, at $200 an hour. And what I realized at that moment was with anxiety, because I've had it on and off, right? But it was always there until now.
Okay.
What I realized was that even if we start getting better, I can have one moment in time, one episode, that will bring back that anxiety full throttle. All the work we had done is gone.
Okay.
And there is no unwinding it quickly. You're talking years to get a little bit of help again. So I realized that journey, and in fact, the psychiatrist agreed with me. Maybe you're looking for something else. I kind of agree with you. We had a talk after.
This was in recovery, right? Early recovery, you're saying, or no?
At this point, I was just getting agoraphobia. I might have been sober at the time. I was sober in Sacramento for about a year, a little over a year. But it was horrifying. I couldn't function. I couldn't go into convenience stores. I couldn't do much of anything. without just having complete panic. You know, my heart throttling, full throttle, I'm sweating, feel like I'm going to go unconscious. But let me just, I mean, people with anxiety knows what it feels like. They don't need my opinion on that matter. And if you don't know what it feels like, then it doesn't matter anyways, right? You're good to go.
Yes.
But that was one of the most debilitating parts of being a human for me, and I could not shake it. And it's fascinating where it started, right?
Okay.
I can tell you right where it started in childhood. And the fear was so great that he couldn't shake it. And it just became full-time anxiety for a child. But I was early in recovery. Jason and a buddy of ours named Adam were really inspirational. In fact, Adam used to drive me down here and try to help. I remember being in his car and realizing I was insane, looking out the window in early recovery saying, this dude's talking to me, man, but I don't hear anything he's saying. And I'm hearing what he's saying, but I can't understand it. I was just confused. But I had worked on the spiritual aspect of what it means to be spiritual as a human. And I was trying to, walk down that road the best I could.
Right.
And I used to have to, this might sound funny, maybe other people do it too, but I was literally going to a friend's house that was 20 minutes away, 15 minutes, and I would have to make 4 maps to get there, and I had been there before. But I was so terrified of losing my way, right? That's how scared you are, a grown man.
Just got in your head.
Oh my God, I can't pull over and ask somebody for directions. It got in my head. It was consuming me.
Yeah.
And I was driving in Elk River, and I had gotten to a point where I just couldn't live sober and clean and tormented anymore. I have no interest in recovering forever. It's painful.
Right.
And I just kind of stopped and I grabbed all the maps and I said, I can't live like this anymore. And I threw them on the ground and I took a left to where I didn't know where I was going. This is unsafe. But I just had to break through that. And as I said, they say God helps those who help themselves. So I was driving and all of a sudden my whole vehicle became consumed with something. And I was driving, as I said. How all this happens and works, I have no idea. But I just felt this love overwhelm me. And I felt like I was being cradled in God's hands. This is as true as I could tell you. I literally felt that, like I was being cradled like a little baby as a child. And I felt.
When was this? Do you know the year or how long ago this was?
About 9.5 years ago.
Okay.
Yep. I had been working in a program, and just trying to grow in it. And I heard this voice in my head, and it said, Rusty, everything's okay, and everything's gonna be okay. There's nothing to be afraid of. I heard that twice. And it's funny because I've listened to people speak, and they say, I heard this voice, and it said, everything's gonna be all right. There's nothing to be afraid of. And I just sit in the crowd and say, wow, that's fascinating, right? And I felt, and Jason pointed this out, he said, when I had my spiritual experience, he said something like, I could see the edges of the leaves and the space between the leaves. And that's exactly what happened to me. Everything became vivid. I mean, I noticed the trees to my right and the lake to my left. Everything, it's like I have been walking through life and I just forgot how absolutely beautiful this world is. You become complacent, right? You don't even notice the beautiful Minnesota road as you drive down. You've been down it so many times.
Right.
A tree is a tree.
Right.
Well, that day, a tree became something far more than that. I mean, everything. It was like I had a telescope in my eyes. And as I felt this cradling and this love. I mean, I was overwhelmed with love. I never knew love could feel like that. One thing that's highly irritating is when somebody says, and I see this all over the internet now, I took a hallucinogenic and I had a spiritual experience. I've done both, and they don't even compare. I mean, they are so far apart. I don't even know where to begin. It's misleading, it's a lie, and it's fraud.
Right.
to say that you're going to take a hallucinogenic drug and have a spiritual experience. After having a spiritual experience, that's about the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
So for you though, personally, Rusty, is at that point where you're driving and you felt this overwhelming love and you're being cradled, did you notice at that same time your obsession, everything had all these things since childhood, everything just left you?
At this moment, so what I felt was, I felt like the umbilical cord I had attached to humanity, I held way too much value in what they thought. That is why
Right.
you have anxiety. If there was not a human
Right.
on this earth, it would be difficult to have anxiety,
right.
right?
Be peaceful.
But yes, at that moment, and I felt like my umbilical cord got disattached from people. I don't know how else to explain it. That's how I explained it to Jason, and attached to God. And I cared what God thought, and
Not
no
they.
longer
No more
what
they.
humanity
Yeah.
thought. Right? It was interesting. And at that moment, I lost the pit in my stomach, that emptiness, that hollowness. Sometimes we say it feels like there's a softball stuck in there. That was gone. I lost my anxiety for the first time since I was probably 6 years old, and I'd never had a thought of drinking or doing drugs again. Never.
How far into your recovery did that happen?
It was probably 6 months. I don't
Okay.
remember. I wasn't, when you're a newcomer, you're not writing things down and paying attention.
It's still kind of foggy.
You know what's kind of funny? I did write stuff down because I wanted it to be accurate. And you know what? I looked at what I wrote and I could barely read it, and it's so choppy, from what my memory actually remembers
Yeah.
later on even.
Just
But
you mean all over the map, or when you say choppy, just you couldn't even half read what you wrote?
Right.
Well,
Or,
right after I had my first spiritual experience, which was life-changing, like what was Rusty was describing, I think it was because of the dramatic change and shift that happened into me. The reason it was hard to describe that in English and put that on paper, what had just occurred.
Right.
I wanted it documented, and I still have that. So,
Isn't it funny how? So we've all probably kept journals or some recollection if we've been to treatment. Like I went back and read my journals for my first 3 months, and man, I was a mess. I read them like a month ago, and I was unimpressed.
but it also shows the growth that you personally had,
It's like I'm 3 different people since then.
right?
And I want to say I had no fear driving home.
I was going to
lost.
touch on the whole driving
Yeah.
while
No
you felt
fear
like you're
anymore.
cradled.
I
Yeah.
didn't
Since
care
then.
where I was going. I
God,
did
that's
not
so
care
freeing
how I got
sounding.
home. It was.
Yeah,
it was
just freeing.
so freeing. It was, and I don't know if I would have believed in it if somebody else didn't. In recovery, we make those things seem like such a mountain you can never
Right.
get there. You know what I was punching my steering wheel and saying the whole way home? Oh my God, let go and let God. If everybody knew how easy this was,
clicked.
it would be happening for everybody. It is so simple. It is open for, I was screaming in my car, let go and let God. Let go and let God.
So can you put your
That's what
That's so
happened.
awesome.
in your
let
mind?
go.
In your mind, Rusty, do you think you can put your finger on? I mean, to ask a reason why you think this happened at 6 months in
I know.
recovery. Okay, that's what I want to hear. Is what do you define the reasoning behind it?
So, as Jason very eloquently says, you have a shift in your psyche. That is a good way to explain it, because the psyche is a be-all, right? So if you have a shift, there's a lot of change, right? But, I'm sorry, what was your question?
The defining. Can you
Oh, yes,
define
I apologize.
why you think this happened to you at this time?
I do.
I love you,
so,
Rusty.
for a spiritual experience, everybody likes to think you become Jesus.
well, the one who has it, thinks
Right.
they are Jesus.
Right. You
Right,
do.
yeah, exactly.
You do for about 30 seconds.
Yes.
But it definitely has made people think they're God and done weird things to them because you're so overwhelmed. Having a coach would be nice. But here's what I realized at that moment. It was not a lifestyle change. It was merely I had the right thoughts for the right moment. Right? For all you have to do is open up that doorway to God for 1 second, let him in, and then, you know what I mean? That's it. It's not something I became.
Right.
It's something that happened
Okay.
to me. And one thing I did say just before it happened, I don't think you could say this and
You can
have
say
it
whatever you
happen,
want. Feel free.
But
Someone on air wants to know what happened.
But what I did say was just before that happened, God, it has to be lonely being you. I have asked you for your love and your support my whole life, and I don't think I ever took one moment to return it and say, I love you. And that was absolutely right when it kind of started opening up. So I did say that. Not that it was a reason. I want to be clear. The only reason is because I got my mind in the right place in the right moment, and I let go of man,
Okay.
and I attached to God. Wow. Now, I started walking around after that, and I would say to people, do you think Jesus would wipe a mustard stain off his shirt? And everybody look at me like
kinda
I'm
deep.
crazy, like they always do. But it's,
Like
but
they
it's
always
an
do.
interesting question, right? Because I know what I lost that day. What I lost was the ego. I loved everybody. I mean, I didn't care. I was driving, I don't know if we used to call it my crack car. I bought this car from a dude who he was in recovery, and he used to buy crack in it, so we called it crack car. It was a little
Crack car.
rusted Geo Prism, right? It was barely holding together. And early in recovery, I used to drive these things to meetings, and one thing I noticed was after my spiritual experience, I didn't care what I looked like driving up in that car anymore. I didn't care if there was pretty girls sitting there. It didn't matter. That ego side of you that wants to look good and be popular was gone.
So tying
And
that in.
it grows
Oh,
back on you, and it's talked about in literature. It grows back on you because you're with humans, and so you're going to become the same person you were before, but different. You know what I mean?
That's kind of where my question was going to be, is tying that into, without going into direct detail, but there's different programs that we work for our recovery, and what you experienced to me sounds like one of the last steps some of these programs talk about. Basically, let's just say, like, after having a spiritual experience. Were you at that point in your recovery, like on the end of your, let's just call it steps? Like,
No.
were you at the end? So you had a spiritual experience prior to being done with what you had set up to work through in your recovery.
Yes, because I was still working with somebody at the time.
A sponsor?
Yes,
Okay.
and I remember discussing the steps. I got home, sat in my chair, looked around, and just wanted to make amends to everybody.
Right.
What was the problem? Just call them and tell them. And you had no fear. I had no fear, no nervousness, no anxiety from wanting to deal with these issues.
And from that day forth, it's been just I don't want to say just all downhill and butterflies and sugar cereal, but everything's been a lot easier. You say,
I'm a human in humanity. Life is still tough. It just removed my
Right.
obsession for alcohol. It removed my obsession with fear, which was my anxiety, right? And it did. I mean, I was in recovery a few times prior to this for up to a year. And I would have to go do stuff every single night to stay sober. I mean, I wanted to drink all the time. I used to do in the morning before work.
I can relate.
Go to a meeting after work, go to one at 10 o'clock at night, go to one at midnight.
so the willingness was there. Do we got a question? Tad?
Yeah. We got our first question, guys, and this is from a really, really good friend of mine, my buddy Nathaniel.
Hey, Nathaniel.
We actually got clean around the same time. He's really into spirituality, so he's tuning into this, and he wants to know, how do you continue to connect to God after your experience? And I want you both to answer. We're going to go to Jason first.
Well, I can tell you how I wanted to do, after I had my spiritual experience.
Which I would like to hear about after we answer his question.
Well, I have never found anything better, you know. I loved anything that made me feel like not me. So after I had my
Right.
spiritual experience, I wanted more than anything to, like, basically sit down with God and just ask him some questions. And I wanted some straight answers.
Absolutely.
Me
But
too, brother.
That kind of stuff, I mean, didn't happen. And I spent a lot of time playing around with other religions. You know, every major religion, everybody who had experience, in whatever, Native American practices, Buddhism, Christianity, looked into a lot of psychology stuff, but I wanted more. You know what I mean? I was that way when I got alcohol and drugs too. I need more.
Right.
And I looked. I want to say this. I looked a lot outside of me. You know what I mean? I looked into other people. I looked to literature. I've done a lot of weird stuff. A lot of weird stuff, and it always seems to be when I take the journey within, and I lose
that's it.
a bit more of self. That's the best way I
The
can
bondage of
describe
self,
it.
correct.
However you want to describe it, and you can bypass it in a few different ways. One of the things I with a lot of these different religions I was looking to, I was trying to find the right one, I guess, if you will.
Me too.
And I saw something, all of a sudden it dawned on me, the things in common with them all, First I realized that they worked, otherwise they wouldn't be around. And then I
Right.
started to
Word.
see
Right.
what was, what they all had in common besides their dogmas and their doctrines and their rituals and all this stuff. I kind of looked past it, and 12-step recovery meetings, they simplified it down for us, just basically, how they say you should live your life and deal with your problems.
Oh yeah.
Is the 12-step recovery program.
And we complicate the shit out of it.
Oh, we do.
And then
Yes.
fucking wonder why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Well, we wonder why people run away when they get to their fourth step.
Right.
Maybe it's because we made a mountain out of it and they were scared
Right.
of it. When
Yeah.
you don't have to be afraid of it.
But
No, our sponsor says that all the time. We're making mountains out of molehill, like the biggest problems out of nothing, and it happens. It's what gets between these ears.
And
Yes.
it's a natural human tendency,
Yes,
right?
it
When you
is.
achieve
Yeah.
something, you want to say, this is big.
Right.
Absolutely. Rusty, did you want to touch on how do you continue to connect with God after your
So I
experience?
think Jason would agree with me. I was looking for God my whole life.
Knowingly or unknowingly?
Both.
Okay.
It is
Right.
the nature. It is the nature of a human. When they do studies about lying, and an atheist puts his hands on the Bible, he tells the truth more often.
Really? Like factual studies.
That is
yeah.
that is the power of symbolism in our society. We have no idea. Carl Jung is great at this, right? How
Okay.
you are affected by everything you see, and you don't even realize it. But so I was looking for God my whole life. And when I say experienced him, his love, I stopped looking.
yeah.
Once you found
I
it.
relaxed. I realized that voice that told me, Rusty, there's nothing to be afraid of. Everything's going to be okay.
It was like-
I don't think it was lying to me. And I was not going to church at the time. Church and spirituality do go hand in hand, but they are definitely not the same thing. Right? But I'm not saying I couldn't have not had that experience in church, but I definitely stopped looking. I started relaxing. And one of the interesting aspects, I got home and picked up the Bible, and it all became clear. And I'm not a big biblical theologian. I realized I had been reading it with fear my whole
Wow.
Wow.
But the
we
interesting
don't
thing,
realize that. We think we're too stupid to understand it.
Right.
But it literally was just like a book I wrote. But I would say that I relaxed. We make too big of a deal out of it. You know what I mean?
You had a point to make, Jason?
Oh, just going back to reading the Bible, two different perspectives, before and after. The amazing thing I have found when I read it, to me, that seems to be a mirror more than anything, and all it really does is just reflect myself back to me, and that's the only point I really wanted to make.
I remember once, so just a little history. I've known Rusty probably about 8 years maybe, and Jason going on 12 is what his wife told us on Friday. And Jason was one of my first sponsors, so he's been through the ringer with me. And I remember one of the last times I was talking to him about the big book, and I just said, why? I've read it like 100 times. I haven't memorized. So like I was real good at talking the talk and walking the walk and putting on a show. But Rusty and Jason always kind of seen through that. And no matter how many people I fooled, and I was like, how come I'm seeing new things in there? And he just looked at me and was like, it's because of the elves. There's elves that are putting new things in there for you. And but it was exactly what you guys were talking about. I was reading it. I had been awakened and I had opened my eyes. But you know, until I had experience of God, I couldn't get out of my own way. I thought I knew better.
I was just gonna point out along them lines. You triggered something within me that I've looked at a while back, and I've always found this amazing. This label for God, or that which is whatever you want to call him, is something that the Jews had. You know, their label for God, Yahweh, which is, from what I understand, I am. You know, and Yahweh Hava is basically two ideas or two words put together. I am, who is to be more and more revealed, and that's kind of been, you know, my experience with God. You know, it changes as, you know, my experience with Him changes. You know, a lot of people in recovery, they wrestle with, you know, a concept of God. You know, and I completely understand after, you know, you have an experience with God, you want more.
Oh, yeah.
And that almost becomes addicting by itself.
Right. I can
Because
imagine.
it's so fantastic.
With what Rusty was talking about.
These two always told me it's the good dope. It's the good juice. You get once you get connected.
That's exactly how I used to refer to it.
Once you get
time.
connected, you're in and you want to be plugged
I
in.
have to say this for other people. When I first heard Jason's arrogant, smug self speaking at a club, the audacity of the man to disagree with me.
How dare he?
I looked at him and you realize what people are saying I do now today. I resented him.
Oh, yeah.
I did.
It's
I mean,
common.
I can't believe a guy who I get along with so well and I could talk about anything and he knows things about me nobody else does. But I don't know. I just can't believe, I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, that's
I got my mind's going in like 15 different directions.
Absolutely. We're going to get back to Jason in a second and talk about his experience, but I got a couple things to shout out, and we're going to answer one more question. So first of all, Nathaniel also says that he loves Carl Jung, and God consciousness is the best drug on the planet. And
Absolutely.
I just want to say, Nathaniel, you should hit me up because we should go visit Rusty sometime. You two would get along. You guys have a lot. You're into a lot of the same things, and I'm sure you're going to be calling me asking about Rusty. So we can definitely go do coffee with him sometime. Our buddy Joa.
Hey, Joa.
What up, Joa?
Thanks for checking in, bud.
So he wants to know, what's the difference between a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening? Is there one? Who wants
I would say no, that's the same thing.
I was just going to say the same thing. It's just
I
two
think
different,
so too.
two different
Lingos.
descriptions. It's the American language. It cuts up reality to try to describe it, and they're trying to describe the same thing there.
That's well put. That's well put. I'm still.
That was a great answer.
Yes, it was. I'm personally still not searching. I don't want to say, but I look at many things as a spiritual awakening for myself, yet to experience what Rusty spoke about earlier. But I just see a simple one of me not being where I was 4 years ago, you know, out running and gunning, being as grimy lifestyle as I was living, to where I'm at now. To me, that's spiritual in itself. So whenever I get to a spot of an emptiness or questioning something to that effect, I don't need to. I know from just that simple, small act of where I was to where I'm at now, that's a higher power to me. I don't put up roadblocks on anything for my recovery, and that's just simple. Like I say, bottom of the barrel, nice and easy for myself, or the universe alone. The beautiful things around me. I mean, something greater than myself. I have no issues or questionings in my mind about that. And like you shared, a lot of people do. There's a lot of people I see in recovery That's a roadblock for him.
And
yeah.
Jason. Never mind. Go ahead.
So,
I was going to say. I was trying to remember what you said, and I was going to try to. It's what he said about knowing thyself. Right. I forget the saying. It's great.
Thine own self.
To thine own self be true is a great way. But Jason was right. What I did was introspection. I stopped looking for answers outside of myself, and I began searching for them within myself only.
Isn't
You
it?
have to block out everybody else to find yourself. And you have to admit that you're full of shit.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes
Well,
easier
dude,
said than done,
Which
though.
is
Does anyone here not
really
think that they're
difficult.
not full of shit? Because I know I can be full of some shit.
You know what I mean, though? You have to realize that it's just, you're almost an actor in a play,
Right.
and you're playing a role, and you shouldn't be. You know what I mean?
Where you're putting up masks and whatnot your whole life,
yeah.
dealing with anxiety
Yes,
and
we
So-
learn from early on to protect ourselves.
And just
to-
builds and builds
to
the
not
shields.
open ourselves
Correct.
up.
I want to give hey Brady, what's up? Thanks for joining us on the show. I was going to give a shout out to everyone else that logged in, but Brady spammed us just like he said he was gonna. He's saying hi to Matt, who we want to thank Matt behind. He's behind the computer today. Sid is also still in the house,
Sid.
listening and taking notes for creative direction.
Our two master engineers.
Our two master engineers / producers. And of course, we want to thank them. So feel free to ask your questions. Now we're gonna ask Jason to talk about his spiritual experience.
Yeah.
one of yours that you're talking about. The first big one.
The first big one. The first time let me talk about the first one that I knew that there probably was a God, but I still wasn't sure, and it wasn't that life-changing for me. I was actually in county, and they had locked me up in the hole because I was making hooch in jail, and someone had ratted me out, and I was in there for about a couple weeks.
That's right.
So this is in your active, during your using days? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm basically, you can only sleep so much and work out so much locked up in the hole. And I just pace back and forth, go nuts from one wall to the other. And I found out, they could, you could get a Bible while you're locked up in the hole. And I got one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't have anything else,
Right.
The highlight of being locked up in there was jumping up on the toilet and talking through the vent. There was this guy next to me, this Native American guy. I actually hung with him after we both got out of there because it was like going through Nam together or something. But
That's awesome.
anyway, I'm in there reading the Bible, and then Roy tells me, the AA people that come in and talk to us, and the church people, you can ask to do one-on-one with them. And I was like, really? More human interaction. So I go to, I asked if I could do one-on-one, and the guards asked the AA people, and they said sure. And I went there, and I figured, the AA people, they want to talk about booze.
Right.
So I'm talking to this guy. He looks me up and down. After about 10, 20 seconds, he's like, I ain't got nothing for you, man. What do you want? What can I help you with? And I figured you want to talk about booze, but he didn't want to talk about booze. He wanted to go home and go to sleep or something. But anyway, real good guy. I've talked to him quite a bit since I finally got well. But the church lady that came in there, I figured, of course she wants to talk about, God.
Right.
Or whatever. And she's just smiling ear to ear, and sure she wants to talk about God. And she tells me to read, what was it out of the Bible? Romans.
Okay.
And I start reading through the beginning of Romans, and I don't know exactly where I was at there, somewhere in the beginning of that book in the Bible. And it was the first time I felt the presence of love like Rusty was talking about, but it wasn't a life-changing type of experience for me, but it was something that did occur in solitary confinement.
From just simply reading.
Yeah, life was also pretty bad at that moment in time for me too. I mean, could you imagine being locked up in the hole and not having booze and drugs to
No.
feel good, you know?
No.
And it sucked. I mean, I was thinking about making more hooch, and I was thinking about how to hide it and stuff, but where the guards wouldn't find it again. And but anyway, that was the first like experience I had.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't really much of anything. It wasn't really even life changing, but the profound experience I had that was life changing and life altering for me occurred on 4/28 of 2006 on the corner of 33rd and Veterans in St. Cloud at approximately 11:58 p.m. The only reason why I know that is because that chicken scratch paper that I wrote down, I documented that date and time, you know. That's the only reason why I can recite that all the time. And plus, I've done it multiple times now, so I can remember. But anyway, I'm done with my first four-step inventory, or at least what I thought wasn't a four-step inventory at the time. And it was staring me right in the face how much of a piece of crap and D-bag I really was, you know. And I remember putting my hands on my notebook because I didn't want to be that kind of person anymore. I didn't want to hurt anybody anymore. Anybody who I came in contact with, almost everybody, I harmed in one way, shape, or form, you know.
I'm not sure if you said it, but where were you at in your recovery at this point?
I was 38 days sober.
38 days. Okay. Sorry.
And I had just started working the steps. I was about a week into the steps. And all I was really doing was taking a little bit of dictates from my sponsor, reading the book and stuff he wanted me to do, blah, 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 blah.
Suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm doing it to the best of my ability, kind of on my own, too.
All right.
And that's the way it really has to be. You know, your sponsor can't artificially produce this experience.
So, yeah,
for
it's
you.
your journey. It's your story.
Or a pastor, or a psychologist. You know, I've been to all these types, you know. But that stuff never worked for me. It's always been the journey within. That's why I talk about it. It's been my experience. So, yeah, I put my hands on my notebook, and I'm praying for God to not just remove this stuff to me, because I've seen the summary of the 6th and 7th step on the wall and on the posters and whatnot, but I also wanted God to prove himself to me that he was real.
You wanted evidence, is what you're
I
saying?
wanted evidence,
Right.
because I was pretty skeptical. And what I wanted was evidence. See, my childhood or my upbringing, I was, my parents would drop me off at church, and then they'd bail. That's what I remember, you know, and I'd have to go to Sunday school and stuff like that.
Right.
I do have a vague memory of sitting in service with my parents when I was younger, but what I remember most about it was attending Sunday school classes, and I remember the stories they would tell that they said came from the Bible and stuff like that. That's all I remember. And when it came to Jesus and stuff like that, I mean, I was very skeptical, highly skeptical. I would say with good reason. That made perfectly logical sense to me of what the Christians said. You
Right.
know? And I wanted him to prove himself to me. And that's specifically who I was praying to in my halfway house at the time. And then it started out as like a speck of light, like a little orb or whatever that showed up in the middle of the living room, and I was on the couch, and I noticed it right away. And then the whole light engulfed the room and took it over, and it was a blinding type light too. And out of the light stepped a man. You know, you could see the outline of him, and it was Jesus. You know, and out of his eyes and his mouth came the light and the sound. And what it sounded like to me was a harmonic and like a high pitch fret buzz with a crash cymbal, and it was slowly being cranked up on a stereo system. And as the sound is getting louder, the light was focused on my chest. You know what I mean? And it literally felt like I was being electrocuted. It did feel like I was being
Pain?
electrocuted.
Was there pain, or is it just you know?
It feels like being electrocuted.
Okay.
That's
I've
the
been
best
electrocuted before.
And just like that, the light, and he was gone, and you know, my roommate came out, and he had a weird expression on his face. He went outside to smoke a cigarette, and I wasn't even quite sure like what happened or what occurred. You know, I wasn't sure if it was real, if I was hallucinating from too much LSD back in the day. You know, I didn't know if these were flashbacks that I heard of. I've never had any type of flashbacks or hallucinations to this extreme. You know, two things that confirmed that this experience was real to me, that it dramatically, I haven't been the same since, like Rusty talked about quite a bit. I mean, the contrast from the way I was, and I do say I was some kind of animal in survival mode, you know, just trying to survive.
Up to this point.
And then after that experience, it literally was like a whole new me, you know? And like Rusty said, the desire to drink and do drugs was gone. I mean,
Boom.
Gone. And that was, I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about
I
it.
get goosebumps every time you talk about this.
I know. When I tell that story, the goosebumps that it I don't know. It's hard finding words to describe
Right.
that stuff. And it was literally, how I describe it is it's like being in heaven on earth after that. And that type,
Right.
and being in that state, it wore off after about 3 days though. And then
Yep.
the judgment was back on me.
Right.
And I knew what was wrong with everything again
And-
that I gazed upon.
Wouldn't you say? Well, I would say this. Like in my experience, like after, like I heard someone once say this. So like after you have these spiritual experiences and you're different, like it's easy to fall back into the same tracks, and you could easily go back down. Because
Yes.
personally, I had, and you know this because you know me, before I relapsed, I had a spiritual experience, and where God interceded and stopped me from dying, and like that had happened many a times, like some crazy stuff, and I was different, and then Tad chose to do Tad's will.
Yeah.
You took it back.
And you know, it's interesting you bring that kind of stuff up, because I've known other dudes that have had a profound life altering spiritual experience, you know, with God and whatnot. And two dudes that come to mind, they're both dead today.
Right.
You know, because they went back to the old selfish way.
I want to make something clear. I can never drink again because I intuitively know that if I do, a spiritual experience means nothing.
Right.
Everything that I have worked for and everything that God's love gave to me would be gone.
So
the cravings would return. I would live the rest of my life desiring alcohol.
Are you answering?
I guarantee.
Are you answering the question on the screen?
No.
That's crazy.
I wanted to make
Shout out to
that
Elena.
clear.
So that's crazy because someone just asked similar. Our friend Elena. Hey Elena, how are you doing? Really good friend of mine. And Tim's for that matter too. Has the desire to use or drink come back, and what do you do about it?
It has never come back, even
no.
for 2 seconds. Never.
It hasn't come back. I have a theory about this, and the theory comes from my observations of others I know that have had similar type of experience. And selfishness comes back. You know what I mean? When we begin to try and take from life again, and it causes us more problems. It causes pain with our thinking and pain with emotions. And it's all self-inflicted, and eventually. Alcoholics and drug addicts, they go back to what they think is going to give them some kind of relief from their self, you know. And the guys I know that went back to that, hoping to recapture that, it didn't last very long. Both them guys, within a year, they were dead. You know, one of them was my first sponsor. He died with a needle sticking out of his arm in a toilet at a hotel room. And then my other buddy, he actually tried committing suicide by cops, and they wouldn't blast him, so he went inside the house and blasted himself. You know.
But I know I've heard you say this a bunch of times. Those two were directly, and they influenced you and taught you a lot about.
They impacted me immensely because, man, could they talk an awesome recovery game. But what I observed, that they did not walk an awesome recovery game. They might have in the beginning, but they knew so much they didn't have to do anything anymore.
Their ego consumed them,
Yeah.
I think.
So without
I can relate to that.
those stories,
Because like back before this
Yeah.
time, I was just like that.
Problems continue to happen in
Right.
life.
Life
And
shows up.
if we address these problems and handle them properly, according to what has been outlined to us, that we know that works, there won't be any relief. The mind will think about these problems until you do something for resolution.
I got something. Or
Yeah.
do you have something, Tim?
I wanted to touch on the spiritual experience you had, and you said something, and I don't want to pick it apart too hard, but you said that in recovery they talk about the pink cloud. You're riding high in this pink cloud. And you said after this spiritual experience with the light and the electrocution, and and you both agreed. I saw Rusty shook his head when you said it lasted for about 3 days. Do you think this was a way of your higher power? I mean, in this case, it was Jesus Christ. Do you feel that was him just showing you, okay, hey, here I am, here's your proof, and that lingered for 2-3 days, and then life came back? This was just, this was for you to be shown, it's real, I'm here. I mean, and that what lingered was the pink cloud type of factor. You were on that high for 3 days. You both kind of said, yeah, about 3 days. Then it went away, and life came back in.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that when I think I started this process and my inventory was staring back at me, like I said, I mean, I was a piece of crap, and I tried for years prior to this experience to be a better person, and I was not good. I mean, I couldn't be a better person. I couldn't. My patterns in life were so ingrained into me. They were a natural response I had, and there was so much other work that I had to put in. I mean, from the wreckage I had created, as far as like the rest of the recovery process goes, to even hope to have some type of quality of sound sobriety and peace. I didn't really have lasting rest until after
That happened.
the amends process.
Oh, the
and I
amends,
started
okay.
making all of my amends. I'm down to like about a handful left. I've attempted to make every single amends I'm consciously aware of, and I still do to this day, because I still hurt people.
Right.
I mean, I think I've made amends more to my wife more than anybody.
Makes sense, though.
But yeah, and coworkers and a lot of people. So,
But I would say that the spiritual experience from everything I've learned and studied was the loss of ego, or the fracturing of ego. I know that's hard to understand. You'd have to really study ego you have to study ego a lot to get a lot of information to begin understanding, you know what I mean, what that really looks like. It's a very, very difficult subject. And when you hear some people talk about it, you could tell that no matter how many textbooks they've read, they still don't have a clear view of
So they have
what
their
that
own
means.
experience with it, basically.
But when you have a spiritual experience, I don't know if it lasted 3 days, that kind of really light feeling, right? Warm and wonderful. Might have lasted 5, I don't know. But we have to live on earth. And nobody else is like you when you have a spiritual experience. If I got taken on a spaceship up to heaven, I might have done okay right at that moment. But you have to live amongst
you said
humans
there's
here.
everyone else around you.
I cannot just feel this overwhelming love. I don't even know if I would survive on this earth. I mean, I didn't care what I looked like when I left the house. All these things that are really ego, or what I said, I was not embarrassed to speak in front of people. I didn't go home anymore going, did I say that right? Did I say that? I didn't care. It wasn't other people's opinions. Did not dominate myself anymore. So if there's anything I could say, it's really just the loss of ego. And you have to live here with other humans. So your ego, I think Bill W. says the clamors of the world came upon me again. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Word for word.
Right. And that's exactly what happens. That's exactly. You know, this world is developed a certain way. You can't live contrary to it, to the way humans interact and act.
You had your spiritual experience, but you're still surrounded by tons of people who haven't, and they still are the bondage of self or ego. So, like you say, I think that I'm understanding what you're saying, that you still have, if you were taken away in a spaceship, you'd have been fine because you're not dealing with the rest of our surroundings.
It's just a moment in time. Nothing was ever as beautiful as those 30 seconds. It's just you're shifting your psyche, you give up yourself, you turn to God, whatever that means to you, and you have the possibility. One of the things that troubles me the most is, as a society, we make it sound like, okay, I was going to church before that. I probably went to 8 churches in my area looking for relief, I guess you would say. I had my spiritual experience, and I went to a couple churches, and I was trying to understand what happened to me. And you're happy, and you're like, and I told this pastor, hey, pastor, I had a spiritual experience. And you can just see him immediately. Jason's laughing already because he knows.
Yeah.
He immediately looked at me like, so you think you're special? And I'm like, I put my hands up in the air, and I'm like, I can't even associate with these people.
I've
They
told...
they think I'm lying because they've never had it happen. You know what I mean? And I just went back to myself, man.
Gotta be a little disarming.
It was.
You know?
It was heartbreaking.
Well, I've told my story to 3 different pastors, and all 3 of them basically told me, whatever, dude. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah.
That's almost scary because these are, I don't want to say religious leaders, but that's our go-to. Yes.
Dude, it demonstrates
you're right.
the ego.
Absolutely.
It threatens their perceived position of authority, I guess,
Yep,
over their
of God authority, the authority of.
over their sheeple.
Oh,
their
yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah,
Can
the
I-
followers.
And I am not opposed to church. I want to make that clear.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Either is Jason. We
no,
both
I go to church every Sunday.
Yep.
Okay.
I just say that we have a special guest in the studio right now. It's Serenity, right? Yeah, we have a puppy in the studio.
Which isn't a typical thing, but we're happy to have her. And our sponsor, Rob, has showed up.
Rob, you want to say hi?
Real quick here.
Hello.
And Rob will be back on the show next week with JP. I'm just going to do a quick, we are halfway through the show. Yeah, and, they're going to be talking about Hope Dealers.
JP.
And Rob's got some stuff to talk. I'm probably going to let Rob promo the show at the end since he's here.
Yeah.
And, so I want to shift gears a little bit, and because I have something that I'm hoping Jason will be willing to talk about. And but if anyone has questions, feel free to text me or Tim. Also, just ask them right on here, and let us know. If anyone has ideas for buzzer beater questions, text me or Tim. And Tim has something.
I just wanted to real quick, Joe, Elena, Nathaniel, Brady, all you people that are reaching out. You know what? And a quick side note here is Katie.
John.
One of my biggest cheerleaders. Katie, thank you for tuning in and posting. I really love you and appreciate you. We got Nathaniel, John, Joe, people, everyone, Elena, Cindy. We appreciate you. You guys are the reason this show keeps
Ashley.
going.
That's one of my homies, Ashley. She was there for me when I was on the streets. Amanda, I went to school with her. So
everyone who tunes in and gives questions,
Whatever,
you guys
Rob.
keep this show going and give us new content. We love you guys. We appreciate you. Anyone listening, we love you. And again, thank you, Katie. I love you and appreciate you. Tad, you want to switch that on over? And
Yeah,
we're halfway there.
No one can see, and I'm shifting gears now.
And if you ever have a spiritual experience, contact somebody that has, please, so you have a coach.
So someone
you
doesn't
have
shut you
somebody
down?
can walk you through
Right.
what's happened to you and how to benefit yourself from maintaining that the best you can. Always, I wish I would have had somebody.
Is that what tightened you two up? Was not tightened you guys up, but brought you two closer because of this?
I like Rusty, and I developed an affinity for him because he always told me how awesome I was.
So you fed your
cheerleader.
ego, huh?
I call him J-Dog Extraordinaire.
J-Dog Extraordinaire.
Yeah.
right.
So,
But you know what? With the spiritual experience, I'm sure that is going to bring you together, right?
Right,
When
yeah.
I told
does,
him,
yeah.
he told me, and he was comfortable telling me, and I did not deny,
Right.
or have that look on my face like you're
Bullshit,
crazy,
yeah.
right? I was like, wow, dude, tell me about
Well,
it.
when you have pastors and you have these religious leaders, looking at you funny or basically threatened because you might take some of their flock, what have you, whatever their motives were, not
We
to
don't
give
wanna
you
get
some,
into that
no,
too
but
much, dude.
but you both you shared about both of you shared about speaking with religious leaders who, and not all, and you both said you go to church, so they're not contradicting it, but it had to be real uncomfortable to think you could go to them with this and get some, I don't know, a relation or some comfortability with it, and that happened.
Honestly,
It taught me a great lesson of what this world really is, right? It taught me a fantastic lesson. It did. I'm glad it happened the way it did.
I didn't think too much of it. I mean, I'll tell anybody who wants to listen to me, but if they don't want to listen to me too,
Right, you didn't put a lot of stock into it. You just kept on moving.
And another thing that caused my fear to dissipate was that I have the intuitive belief that I am going back to where I came from. I'm going back home.
Which makes it comfortable.
Right.
Which makes it very comfortable. I just had a feeling we're here to learn something.
Especially with the whole life of the anxiety that you shared about from childhood up.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's awesome. What do you want to bring up the question, Ted? We got, I think, Nathaniel.
Nathaniel has another question, and then we're gonna try and shift gears. If not, keep the questions coming because we'll answer them as they come. That's what the show is about. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Did you guys experience a ego death or just a tone down of the ego after that? Like, does the ego eventually take back over?
Of course.
That's a lifelong process, you're saying,
I would
Steve?
call what I experienced the death of an ego. When I study psychology and guys like Carl Jung and the rest of it, you hear what death of the ego is basically the loss of ego.
Okay.
And I felt the death of my ego, right? That is that needy, attached thing. Like, we all have attachments, man. Whether it's my coffee sitting right here or human beings I love or a car or, all these things
Material.
take away from right the beautiful thing inside. They consume us.
Blinds us to this.
I wish I had a better way to talk about it, but if you want to have a spiritual experience, never work with somebody that doesn't believe in them, that's for sure.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
You know what I mean?
No, that's
Work
sound
with
advice.
Somebody who has, because the reason I think I was able to get to that point was because I believed Jason and he believed.
So when you had yours, he already had his.
I didn't have doubt. And you know what the difference is? The difference is I believed in God before it happened, and I knew him after. That's why I relaxed. I know God exists now.
Right. So the open-mindedness, the willingness, those things they talk about in this recovery, those play a big part in what occurred with you. Is this open-mindedness, willingness, and what moving forward you needed to experience this.
Yeah. And you can look at Jesus as a great example. I mean that. What attachments did he have?
Oh, yeah, dude.
He had none. Think about that.
No, you're right.
That is kind of the quality lesson in that, right? And also when he talks to, I can't say this right, but the rich man, he says, are you willing to give up all your possessions and follow me? I realized when I read that at that moment that the only reason he was asking is if you say yes, you're good to go. I don't think he meant you have to give up all your things and follow me. Just are you willing to? Are you willing to let go and let God? And so that's why I say a moment in time. It's just a shift of the psyche. And I don't know how else to express it, but I knew that it was open for everybody and simple but nobody could show you that. I want to make that clear. When I study these guys, like Anthony DeMello is a fantastic one for attachments and love. But he always says, he cannot take you there. Only you can take yourself there. He can give you some information and see what you do with it. But you cannot obtain somebody else to have you walk up to
I think you depicted it really well. Telling your story about your experience, I think that was very vivid. And I felt like I was next in your passenger seat. I mean, that was you told us it really well, and I appreciate you for that.
I might have seen Jesus like Jason too, but if he was sitting in the passenger seat, I probably would have ended up in the lake. You know what I mean? That would have been a little too much.
Right.
I was driving.
Right.
When I had my experience, it was a bit much, and I actually prayed to God shortly after that to leave me the hell alone.
So it scared you. It scared you.
It really scared me, man.
Yeah, you're sober, you're clean at the time, and something like this that's not in the norm, even though you were wanting this, and it happened. I can only imagine the
Right.
fear that comes into you. Not, you got questions. It's
So you pray to God, leave me the hell alone.
Yeah.
he comes
I'm
to
not
show you.
joking about
Yeah.
that.
No, I believe you. You can see the look in your eyes, and
Jason
just-
is brutally honest about these issues.
That's why you guys are sitting where you're at right now. Tad told me about you guys, and he said they've got to be in our first month. They've got to be on this show. And Tim, you'll see why when they're here. And I'm seeing why. Wow, we do have a dog in the studio.
Yeah, you just noticed? Yeah.
No,
That's Serenity trying to get famous by being on air.
Looks like he or she wants to play.
Yes. So, Jason, do you, and I know you talked about this before, do you remember when I was in treatment at the one by your house in Princeton?
Yeah.
And-
when I first met you.
Well, that was not when you first met me. That was like
literally
6
like
years later.
right
and
across
I
the
called,
street
I found
from my old house.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
found your name
I
on the phone
remember
list.
those days.
I had got, like, you were my sponsor, and then I had gone to prison, and then I found your name on a phone list, and people
Yes.
were like, yes, that is your Jason B.
Yeah.
And then I started, and then I called you, and I'm like, hey, Jason, this is Tad. And you're like, yeah, I've only ever known you. And I remember two things, So, so I'm getting ready to graduate treatment, and I had to do, or in the middle somewhere, I had to do a presentation. Do you remember that? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No.
And you and I had talked in depth, and so what you told me about is, we're all the selfishness,
Okay.
and the opposite of selfishness is
Love.
love.
Yes.
Now, do you remember what I'm?
No, but
Oh,
that's something I
and-
always say. Because
Yeah, and
Set it on
you
the
had
way
this.
here.
You had this great diagram, and like we had talked, and you had said that we're all selfish and self-centered in nature, and the nature of that being selfish is to take,
Yes.
and the opposite of that is love, which is undefinable.
It's yes, it is. It is. It is undefinable.
I've been
a
trying
lot
for
of
the last
people,
few weeks, and you can't.
and even
define it.
me, describe it as like an emotion. But the nature of love is to give. Just like the opposite of selfishness, the nature of that is to take.
Yep.
And
what-
by giving, you get the good emotional byproducts of taking those actions.
And what is here's the hot question: what is the only way you've ever seen for people to get from that selfish nature to the other side?
The only way? Well, the most
At the time, you told me the only
Most
way.
effective.
the most effective.
The most,
yes.
yeah, there you go. It's not the only way. The most effective way.
The most effective way I've seen is to do the steps. I mean, it reverses the whole process. I mean,
In order.
if you look at
With a
this,
sponsor.
it is the opposite of that. I mean, especially when you get to step 9 and you start making these reparations and these relationships you destroyed and giving back the stuff you took. I mean, for me, that's kind of what I had to do because I took a lot of stuff from a lot of people.
I still hear to this day when I think about not making an amends to someone, I still hear every dime must be made, must be paid,
yeah.
Dad.
know-
I hear that like in my core.
Well,
Or
and-
accounted for. It needs to be
Well, I got-
accounted
Yeah.
for.
I got that story from the Bible. And the story goes something like this. I mean, I'll probably butcher it, but I think Jesus is telling a story or a parable, like, that's his thing. He tells stories to teach, and it's a fabulous way to teach because there's so many different aspects of it. But anyway, he tells the story something along these lines that if your brother has something against you, go be right with your brother. If you don't, he'll deliver you to the judge, and the judge will throw you in prison or something like that. And he says something like, "And verily, verily, I say to you, you will by no means get out until every last cent is paid." And the way I view money is just like it's a medium of exchange or a transaction mechanism, And in the Bible, well, every interaction I have with a human is some type of transaction. Either I'm taking or I'm giving, And if I take from somebody, I'm indebted to that person until I pay them back, And I look at these things, selfishness and love. I was watching The Matrix one time, and it dawned on me when I was there's a lot of neat stuff about that movie besides just the visual stuff and the storytelling, but there's a lot of philosophic stuff in there too that I think is just fantastic. But it dawned on me what this whole process is, the steps. And to me, the best way I can sum it up is steps 4 through 9 to me is like algebra. First, you identify what the problem is. It may be a big scrambled problem, but you simplify it down to its simplest form, like let's say it's negative n, and you identify it clearly, and you know that's what it is in the inventory process. And then the rest of the stuff, how do you get rid of negative n? Well, once you go through the rest of the process and you identify that, you get it out in the open with someone else. In step 9, you make reparations for that, and I use that word because that's what it is. I mean, each situation is to be handled differently, because in that transaction I make with someone where I take and then I'm indebted to that person, there's a separation that happens between you and that person because of the selfishness, and I become more isolated by my actions, and I have more negative emotions that torment me. And I pay attention to my emotions, but I don't pay 100% stock in them. But my emotions to me are a good indicator, like the lights on the dash of a vehicle. If you're driving the vehicle, if it starts to light up like a Christmas tree, there's something going on with the engine.
Right.
You better pull over and pop the hood to see what's going on, So I identify down to negative end, I make reparations, and the reason how I get rid of negative end is with positive end, and they cancel each other out, and you're left with zero. I mean, that's a big fancy way of trying to describe it, but it works. I mean, it works. I don't have to philosophically try and comfort myself, Dr. Phil style, or take medication or anything like that. This stuff is better than therapy, better than a doctor's medication, better than what a pharmacist or getting illegal dope on the street. The effect it has on me and my psyche, it doesn't linger. There's no residue.
It's one and done, basically. You deal with it, move on, and it's behind you.
My mind is finally at rest after the process is completed. Sometimes, in my experience, sometimes that process will take a couple of years.
Right. Well, like a living amends, a living reparation, or how where someone just says, you know what, I just want you to stay, to make things up for me, just stay clean.
If my mind will not let it go, there's a reason.
There's
why.
more to do.
Like Tad was bringing up, I will not get out of that jail cell until every last cent is paid.
Okay.
And that's just the way I look at it. And the reason why I look at it that way is not just because the Bible says it or Jesus says it in a parable, but my own experience also tells me that that's true. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it corroborates that story.
Rusty, do you mind, since we're talking about amends, if I bring something up that I know about you and you talk about?
Oh, I thought you were going to make an amends to Rusty.
You could talk shit about me all day, Tad.
You remember the story that you had told me when you were making amends? I'm going to butcher this story, but so there was this kid, and you walked into your house, and they were scared of you, but like it was the opposite before.
Ooh, are you talking about from my childhood?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you want me to talk about that story because it kind of contradicts what we're taught, but yeah.
It's your experience.
It's your experience.
All right, so let me tell this story, but I'm telling you, it's not going to end the way you think it would in a spiritual
I just want to
sense.
say that this connected me to Rusty for some reason when the first day I met him, like he was staring me dead in the eyes, and in the middle of talking about everything we've talked about now, he told this story.
And we got to hear it.
So I grew up in a neighborhood in Whittier, California that was pretty violent. I saw a lot of violence, deaths, stabbings, shootings, crushed heads with baseball bats. We had a couple people end up at our doorstep. We lived on Washington Boulevard on the corner, so we even had a couple stabbing victims. There's a hospital down the street. I remember walking out to our back door. My mom woke up. We heard somebody hit it, walking out there as a little kid, like 8 years old, and seeing a guy look like he had poured red paint over him. He had been stabbed so many times. He's gurgling up blood, right? So I come from this pretty violent pretty violent place, and I'm glad I did. Glad I had the experience.
Made you who you are today.
Yes, and that's where my anxiety started, and that's another fascinating. What Tad's referring to was, there was a kid. I'll just call him Mike, okay? Because I don't want to give last names and stuff. We'll just use that name. He was a bully. Right? I had to fight this kid on the way to school, and already I didn't want to go to school. I already had anxiety. I'd beg my mom not to go. Half the time I'd walk back home from school and say I was sick, but I had to deal with this kid. At school, before school, his dad was in a biker gang, and you'd just see the bikers come over and, congregate in the yard. His dad used to beat that poor kid. And the reason I know that, even with change, is because he'd always come to grade school sore, right? He'd say, yeah, my dad beat me. But I would try to play with this kid. Even in my own yard, he'd come down and my mom would be like, I told you, don't play with them. Next thing you know, bam! This kid just socks me right in the face and go down crying like a little baby running to mommy. And she'd just slap me again and say, I told you not to play with them, you idiot. But so there was fear, right? I had moved to Minnesota when I was 12. That kind of haunted me because I knew I was coming back one day, right? And I'm going to have to deal with this kid. It's weird the way things haunt you, but it never left me. And I never talked about my experiences when I got to northern Minnesota because, frankly, nobody would have believed me, right? They're in northern Minnesota. We had zero crime in like 5 years. I mean, no rapes, no muggings, no shootings.
Things you're dealing with on a day-to-day from where you came from. Okay.
Yes. Right. I'll tell you one thing that growing up there taught me. I can read people. Because when you're a little kid, you better learn if somebody means
read a room.
Danger. I would have people pulling up in cars, men trying to get me into the car as a little kid. You better learn. You ever seen a movie how this kid rides in circles in bad neighborhoods and he never stops his bike? There's a reason why, trust me. And that's so you could fly when somebody's coming after you. We had a lot of gang members in the neighborhood too, but here's what Tad wants to hear. But it kind of contradicts everything.
Okay.
So I was 18, just finished military boot camp. I was in great shape and had a shaved head. I went back to my neighborhood and I just knew I had to deal with this. It was haunting me. I had to go back and see these people. I needed closure. So I went back to the neighborhood and I said, hey, where's Mike? Where's the family living now? They were a wicked family, drugs, beatings, cops were over there all the time. And they said, well, they moved a few blocks away, but why do you want to know? That's what my old neighbors said. They were like, something's weird here. What are you going back there for? Because they knew the history, right? I resented adults in my neighborhood because none of them would deal with them or his dad. And they were terrorizing the whole neighborhood. I mean, nobody would go down there. Even the male adults were scared, you know what I mean? So I got to the front door, and I did not know what I was going to do, but I knew I needed closure.
Right.
So I pounded on the door hard so they knew there wasn't some, weasel dude outside. And they opened the door, and all three of them were there. His sister, Mike, the bully who bullied everybody. I'm not going to tell you the story at the end before I left, but I did pummel him pretty good before I left. I grew really tall at the end. So we did have a fight at the end, and I kind of closed out. So I walk in there, and I must have looked angry. And I'm telling you, I don't know what I was going to do. I wasn't there to make friends, and I wasn't there to kill anybody. I honestly do not know. But all of a sudden, I looked pretty mad and pretty aggressive, I would assume. His dad is a big dude. And him and his dad put up their hands in the air like I was about to shoot him. And they started backing up, and they said, hey, man, we're not like that anymore. And my anger dissipated, right? My tension. And I put out my hand, and I said, hey, I'm not either, man. And I shook both their hands, and I walked away. But just going there and doing that resentment and all that haunting and all that fear went bye-bye, right? And I did not go make amends. You know what I mean? It kind of contradicts what we're taught, but I did face that ultimate fear from my childhood. And the fact that they feared me when they opened the door definitely made me feel good.
Oh, yeah.
I have an ego, and I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, the years of torment alone.
Absolutely. It made me feel strong.
Right.
I gained my power back in front of these people, but I just found it a fascinating journey, and it closed the door on that, and I moved on.
Wow.
But it had haunted me for quite a while. And I don't necessarily know why. I think it was because I knew I was going back to that city, and I moved back there right when I was 18 from Minnesota. And, you know, I knew I was going to have to face them, and you're always looking over your back type of thing. And I was afraid of him because of what he did to me as a kid. But, yeah, fascinating. But it just relinquished all the tension and anger and stuff I had. Yeah, I can't believe I told you that story.
That was
I
the
don't tell
first
you-
day I met you.
I don't tell too many people.
You know, this isn't a dig, but I see where Tad would relate with that. Just from the stories you've told me about your past. And it's not a dig. What it is, Tad, you lived a different life before recovery, and there was some violence involved.
There was,
you know, there
definitely.
was situations not identical to that, but you've shared stories with me where you could relate, and I see where he not hung on to that story, but he related with you. You know,
But
and that's a
Absolutely.
connection. That's
after
You know, you bring up a good
Yeah.
point. You use that word connection.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say that's what you did. You established a connection.
And like when I talked to Jason, like, and this is after I'd been to prison and some stuff had happened, and I called him out of the blue, and like he's working with me, and I don't remember if it was before or after my fifth, because we've done a couple fifths, and I've always held on to stuff. Me and him have done like 3 or 4 fifths. There was
fifth steps.
Yep. And at any rate, he's like, there's someone I need you to meet. Because I was pretty pissed off. I think we can all agree that, especially back then, I was really pissed off. And is that accurate, guys?
I got more to add to that. That'll work.
And, you know, he's like, I need you to meet someone. And he was just telling me about how there's this guy and he started building up Rusty. Like he was agoraphobic. And I thought that I was going to meet this angry agoraphobic guy to help him. Just so you know. And I sit down with Rusty, and he gives me a cup of coffee, and we're smoking, and he just tells me all this story. And like he looked me, and like I was adrenaline running because he's like looking me in the eyes and like damn near screaming these stories at me very intensely. And like
being
when
real,
we got there, he's
yeah.
under his trailer, like working. Oh man, it was crazy. And we've had some good talks. I think these are two of the guys that have been the realest with me, and I know it wasn't the time that got me clean. Like, I just want to say publicly, like, I love both of you. Jason has never turned his back on me, and neither has Rusty for that matter, but they've been real with me. At the beginning, so you guys remember when I got back into meth, and after all
I
this,
remember going to pick you up outside of Casey's in Zimmerman. We were going to go watch the Avengers or something.
we did go
like
watch
it.
the Avengers.
Yeah. But dude, you were so scrawny, dude. You looked like a dying Ethiopian
You
laying
told me
on
that
the
all the time.
sidewalk. I took you to McDonald's,
The
dude.
horrors of addiction.
I was like, I got money, and
Holy
you fed me 3 times that
Jason.
night.
Was that him in the park years ago where somebody called and we were driving around and he goes, I got nowhere to go. And you go, you got a park bench, don't you? And the guy on the other side goes, yeah. And he goes, there's a water fountain there, ain't it?
No, that
yeah.
wasn't me.
And he goes, well, it's 80 degrees out, right? Yeah. You're fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is awesome. The
Drink
reason
some water.
Jason did that is because he's been homeless.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I was
Right.
homeless for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with being homeless.
No, I had a counselor down the road here named Karen who she said it for 5 months to me, and it never clicked until I came out, I'll say the real world of recovery. But she always said at least 3 times a week, the opposite of addiction is connection. Now that's a way of looking at things, but it never really clicked with me until I started getting into the fellowship of recovery. Period. Whatever program, whatever anonymous program, but that connection, once I got true connection in this program with other addicts, other alcoholics, that gave me a peace where the connection of telling another man I'm hurting, and he was there to listen to me, whether he gave me feedback or was just an ear to listen to me, but that connection, that saved my life. on many different levels of this recovery journey for me is that connection. We can say opposite of addiction, but it was opposite of me not living. But that connection, it has me sitting here today and keep going full throttle into recovery because without the connection of another, basically I put it this way, is another grown man, me telling another grown man, hey, I'm hurting. And he's there listening to me and I'm being genuine. And whether I need advice or just an ear to tell to, they're there for me. And that Tad's one of the guys I do that with.
Or just like sharing your feelings and talking about stuff. And that was weird. Like me and Tim had something last night. We had a conversation about something that was bugging me. And like we had a real conversation. I don't think I've ever had this conversation with someone I wasn't in a relationship with or in with a therapist. And it's one of the first times.
We need that.
So one of the things that... So what I was getting to is and I just want to touch on this just because if anyone's struggling, that there's always hope. Jason and Rusty both talk about planting seeds, and so do a lot of people. So, and he was talking about, and it's around this time. These are leading up to these events. So right after that Avengers night, a couple days later, Rusty goes, "What's the fucking deal, Tad? Like we're nice. We don't care that you're using." Like, we don't care. We took you to Avenger. You had money and we didn't even make you pay. Jason fed you. He fed me like 3 times that day and tried to feed me
Dude,
like 4.
I'm not kidding, man. You look like you were die, man.
Hey,
they picked me up. We went to eat. We went to the movies. He bought me more food, went out in the middle of Avengers, got me more food on our way to Walmart afterwards, fed me. And as we were dropping me off, he was like, "Are you sure you don't want to eat more?"
I want to reiterate what you said about Jason a little bit ago. He never gave up on you. That is Jason's greatest quality. No matter what I do, and I guarantee this, no matter what he says right here, if I relapsed, if I started stealing, if I hurt somebody, Jason is just a loyal friend. He will not, like a lot of people in recovery, right? You're either with us or you're against us. I mean, you feel that.
So that's we talked about this last week. Unconditional love,
yes,
or unconditional kindness, not putting conditions on it.
Jason is very loyal like that. He will stick it out with you as long as you're willing to stick it out.
So we're on the phone.
That's key.
So we're on the phone, and Rusty goes, "What's the deal?" He's like, "You're just spinning around in circles." He's like, "You know what I can deal with? Be fucking honest with me, Tad." This is you talking. And you said, "Tell me, if you're pissed off, what is it? Is it your dad? Is it like, were you molested as a kid?" Like, he just wanted me to be honest. And, I tried the best I could for someone who was high on meth for 22 days, to be honest with him at that time. And I think I told him, I said like 3 or 4 things, and I said, I don't know other than that. And I know as long as I continue to have dope, I'm not.
And that is a good answer.
Right.
I don't know. What irritates the shit out of me, whether I'm working with children or adults, is when you are bullshitting me, and I know you are bullshitting me. I've said to people, I can smell your ego from 100 feet away, and I can taste it from 10 feet. I mean it. I don't know if it's a spiritual experience or just how I grew up having to read people, but I can tell immediately if you're lying to me almost. And when people, I'll ask them what's wrong, and I'll just, and they'll tell me something, and I'll actually know it's something else.
Right.
I know what's bothering them. I just haven't said so. Right? And then they'll say, well, I miss my whatever or this and that. And they have a really hard time being honest about what's bothering them. But you can't help somebody until they get out in the open.
It took a lot of work for me to be honest.
It's embarrassing, isn't it?
Right.
Yes. I mean, it
was like a 2-year freaking process for me.
Yeah.
This was like 2 years before I finally got clean. And then, I flash forward to Jason's involvement in this. So before I get into this story, before I went to prison, I stayed clean for 3 months before I went to prison to fucking prove a point to Jason. And when I told him that,
out of spite,
when I told him that, so in total, so it was 9 months I stayed clean. I lasted 10 minutes after I got out. But anyway, Jason was like, I've never heard anyone say that.
And I will say I have been brutal to Tad. I have.
He still has. Like I had.
Right.
When he came back into my life, Rusty was my sponsor, and he was talking about old Tad. like the whole time we were working together, he was bringing up shit that maybe I did a little bit, but didn't do. And like, that's why I didn't talk to him for a minute.
Tad asked me to sponsor him a couple times, and after our first conversation, he doesn't call me back anymore.
No, it was after our 7th conversation.
Oh, boy.
It was after our 7th.
I know how to
But
get
you know
you
what?
didn't piss me
A
off.
lot of us,
It was
until we're
just-
ready, we don't want to hear that honesty.
No.
You don't want to
Right,
hear
right.
someone calling us on our shit. We're
And-
waiting for that co-signage, you know? It's-
Absolutely.
You know what Jason would do to me? I would say, hey, Jason, this guy just pissed me off.
Work with them more.
Right? And he would say, so what are you afraid of, Rusty? And I'm like, dude, can't we even talk on the phone about how angry I am once in a while? He was right. Every time I could whittle it down to what made me uncomfortable about that relationship and that event, every single time. In fact, he kept doing that until I did it myself.
Till you got it yourself.
I stopped believing I was angry, and I realized, okay, Rusty, you're just afraid. And it's hard
Fear.
to find that fear sometimes. Go, I'm not afraid, I'm pissed off. Well, if you get into that
Stems.
relationship, like you don't want to address them or approach them, maybe they did you wrong.
Right?
Right.
But you don't want to do that. You want to avoid it, just be angry. But that was one of the better things he did in really developing me, is he always would say that on the phone.
There's an interesting thing that I want to say that.
And I began inventorying myself real quick because of
I've
that.
heard this before, and I think it's pretty true. This statement is accusations harden the will, but questions prick the conscience. And they cause the person to look inside themselves.
Yes.
So
Yes. It
doesn't
forced me
bring
to-
up that critical factor in the mind, which is kind of a defense mechanism.
Right.
You know,
The stopping guard.
The self-preservation actually hurts you. So whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. But it's all about introspection. And if I go anywhere, and I think Jason would agree with me here, until you get deep into yourself, like oftentimes our whole energy, everything we're doing is based on people outside of ourselves.
Right.
Right? And it's difficult to find yourself when you're interacting with people and they interact with you in a certain way. But I want to reiterate that again and again and again and again. It
Right.
is all about introspection. When I have feelings, maybe sadness, I'm looking for why I have those feelings. And there's always a reason. But if you don't examine yourself and why you have those feelings, your feelings are running you.
Right.
Right.
Well, in early recovery for me, well, not even early, but, you know, the first year, I surrounded myself with a lot of the old timers and a lot of the old drunks, let's say that, in recovery. And it used to just get under my skin because every time I'd come to these guys with my little bullshit problem, and a guy Dave, and Bob for that matter, just, Tim, what was your part? No matter what the problem was. Even if it was as little as I got behind the wheel that day and someone rear-ended me, well, what was your part in it? They would have me, and they would call me on my bullshit, take my inventory, you know, to a healthy respect, but it was, what was your part in this? And I'm for some reason, I'm equating this to what you're saying right now is,
They are related.
you know, my part in a situation, that we all play our part in it. It always rang loud in my ears whenever there was an issue with me, these old timers. Well, what was your part in it? And it was me, basically them calling me on my bullshit. I want someone to co-sign this bullshit problem I have. Well, there's another side of the story, but what was your part in this? You know, and it sounds like the relationship you guys have and what Jason's done, it you know, remarkable. It sounds. It's that whether it's a spiritual side of it or this program that you live by, it sounds very beneficial because I hear what you guys have done for my friend. It's huge.
Oh, and that's not even the end of the story. So after that conversation, I become homeless, right? And you know, and then I'm in a huge raid, and a bunch of crazy stuff happens, and I end up becoming homeless for like, I don't know, a day, and like I get into treatment, or well, actually the psych ward treatment didn't take. Well, it was weird. I went to a sober house, and I ended up getting swooped up right away by a sober house that doesn't take guys off the street. They took me off the street, and then I have like I don't know what happened. Like I started seeing stuff like 30 days sober. It was crazy. So they sent me to the psych ward. But then Jason came to visit me, and he was like, you know what? I wish you would have been homeless longer. I wish you would have had more consequences. And like that, I was pretty pissed off at him for saying that.
Yep.
But I understand now why.
Now, at your point in life, you can understand.
I relapsed one more time before this time after that.
Okay.
And, I was mad, but Jason had worked with me, and
Never gave up.
he never gave up. Well, he just told me before the show he actually asked himself if I was one of the unfortunates.
I'm not sure
Or what?
if, in my mind, I was
If I was ever
unsure
gonna get it.
if Tad was ever going to make it.
You're not the only one I've
'Cause
heard say that.
I like Tad. I thought he was a pretty cool. Well, we like a lot of the same stuff, you know. So
You have common
Tad,
interests for sure.
yeah, it's easy to get along with someone when you've got a lot of common
Yeah.
interests, you know. And plus, I like guys too who are a little bit hyper and worked up. And Tad is one of these guys.
yes,
So
he
is
is.
Rusty.
Yeah.
Right. And, and then flash forward to my relapse, the last one, I died twice. It was those consequences.
Yep.
And I didn't connect these dots till later. And, and that was one of the reasons. So, I'll just also say, Jason's my on-call sponsor. I have a sponsor, our sponsor,
Right,
Rob.
yeah.
But I went through many sponsors in this program. So, if something were to happen to Rob or something, whatever, I call back Jason and he becomes my sponsor again. And and Jason's always a mentor there, and he encourages me to seek other counsel. I actually asked him if it was going to offend him, because I told him I was going to ask Rob to sponsor me and that stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, I would seek other counsel. I would," and I don't know.
No ego there at all.
No, there's only one time that I ever really hear Jason not be spiritual and be below the best is when he's talking about the Minnesota Vikings.
He's not alone out there.
Or money.
Or money. Wow.
That's what Rusty says.
Dude, go watch a game with him, especially if his wife or kids aren't there, or afterwards. Oh man, but we're getting to the age now where we're pretty realistic about the freaking Vikings.
I would say this is the point where the conversation took a dirty turn.
We didn't know you guys were gonna go to that rock bottom. No, just kidding. Oh man,
We're sharing rock bottoms.
Right. I wanna take a quick break. We're almost getting to the end of the show, and you know what's coming up: gratitude and buzzer beater. But I wanna Jane's on. Jane from the kitchen, Mama. If you don't know Jane, she is our
Head food
service coordinator.
Yes.
We probably butchered that, Jane, but we want to give a shout out. She has a gratitude cafe.
Oh God.
Oh, she's always making coffee. Usually on Mondays and Wednesdays, but sometimes Fridays. Look at the 2218 Facebook page, and it'll tell you. They always post the day of what they're making. But she's the best cook.
Yes.
She takes such good care of us. We love you, Jane. Thank you for being on the show, and you guys come by and check out the Gratitude
Yes.
Cafe, dude.
For $5. I mean, come on, and you're getting a full meal.
Full plate. Oh man,
I shared about this, but I got to do
Desserts?
it one more time. The other day, I think it was Monday. It was $5.
Cooking is heavenly.
Homemade biscuits and gravy. Oh, and there was a quiche, and I mean a full. I
For
can't
$5,
finish
you
it.
get a
Yes,
plate, and then you
yes.
get another plate of desserts. It's crazy.
And there's the social distance. Everything's being. We get one person per table, and you're wearing masks when it's not that time, but. The food is amazing. It's all
food
home
sounds
cooked,
good.
homemade pies, and
I tell you what, dude.
Jello.
We did a gratitude dinner for all the people who helped with COVID, and we gave her $250 or something. We had the back 3 tables lined up, and that was the best meal. I've never been so full, dude.
yeah, you don't go hungry here at 2218 ever. Thank you, Jane, again.
So
Yeah, we got 18 minutes. Wow, time flies.
yeah, we got 18 minutes. Do you guys
need
want to
us to
touch on
talk
anything
more?
real?
No,
No,
you know
no.
what?
So we can get into it right now, because then we can lead into it. So first, I'm gonna once again, we're gonna give Sid and Matt a shout out. We also want to give Eric a shout out, who's
Correct,
upstairs.
Eric M. Oh, forget about it.
And he's doing behind the scenes. Matt, would you like to? We're gonna get into gratitude. Would you like to come over here and say something that you're grateful for?
There we go. Pardon the little crackly noises that we're gonna hear.
He could have just leaned in.
Oh,
you didn't have
he's all
to.
close to me and weird.
Well, he could have came over and did it with me.
Oh, that's a little weird.
Good evening, family. My name is Matt. I'm a grateful recovering addict. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to our guests, Jason and Rusty. It was a great show. Thanks for being here. So many things to be grateful for today. I'll start off by saying I'm grateful for my God, foremost. None of this would be possible without him. Thank you. Also, my new job.
Oh, go ahead. You're good. Keep going.
Yeah, you should have never
I
touched
dropped
it.
the ball on the mic. Sorry.
That's all right. New job that I started this week. I'm grateful. It's so convenient. It's right down the road from my house. It's great pay, great people. Grateful for the man, one of my best friends. He's sitting in the room here today. That threw my name out to this company. I probably wouldn't have had this job without him. Thank you, Tad. And just everybody in the recovery world. It is a we program. We recover. I personally couldn't do it without the people in my life and the people in these rooms. So I am grateful for every single one of you guys. Just keep up. Reach out. Like Tim said earlier, the opposite of addiction is connection. I also know that Karen woman, and she is a big part of my life today. I am grateful for a new way. Just life in general. It is amazing what recovery and what my life is like today. Thank you. You guys have a great evening. Stay tuned next week for our Christmas show. It's going to be great. JP and Rob H. as our guests. It's going to be a great show. Have a good night.
And now Sid, who is another one of our producers on the show. What up, buddy?
Hey, it's Sydney. I'm an alcoholic.
He has so much that he wants to talk about with his spiritual experience. He was so mad.
Oh my God!
Let's
Not
hear
to
it.
say my God, but no, I don't know if we have time, but I've had.
You got 5 minutes,
I
Sid.
had experiences that were so similar to yours, Jason, and I don't know if I don't need to talk about it, but I mean, like, well, all right, since you guys said, but
5
like,
minutes.
You can't not talk
No,
about
so
it.
I was
Come
in.
on.
I went to jail. I was only there for like 72 hours. But I was there for half an hour before they threw me in the hole. I called my mom and she was like, "Do you want me to talk to the guy and see if he'll drop the charges?" The deputy or whatever comes on and says, "Roll up your shit. You're going in the hole." I was like, "What?" This is the only time I'd ever been to jail, and he's like, "You can't tamper with witnesses or victims. You're going in the hole." So I go in the hole, and I'm down there for like, I mean, it felt like 12 hours. Who knows? I think it was only like 2 or 3 hours, and Jesus shows up in the little window there, and I'm like, oh shit, inside, you know. I really fucked up.
The J-Man is here.
He's like, "Hey, you know who I am?" I was like, "Yeah, but I'm a Jew." And he said, this is what he said. This is what he said to me. He says, "Yeah, I know, me too."
That's crazy story, man.
My father told me,
Freaking awesome.
I know,
my father told me, "You have to go through me now. You can't just keep praying to him directly as a Jew anymore. You got to go through me." I didn't know anything about Christianity.
Huh.
And so
is
the more I learned, that's the type of thing that he said, you know. And he said, "Now let's get you out of here," you know. And so I went into Gen Pop for like a day and a half and just like read the Bible with some old dudes, you know. So yeah, I mean, I didn't stay sober after that. It was too scary, and it was
Oh, that's crazy.
such
yeah.
a crazy
hard
paradoxical
if
ego boost too, to think, well,
Yeah.
I'm special, you know. Jesus came to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, it's still like an experience that keeps me sober now when I'm working the steps. So
Word.
gratitude. I had some good stuff on the way over, but I forgot.
It's all right. It's all
But
good.
you know, I want to echo what Matt said about my job. I'm so grateful that I get to be honest and open about my mental health and my struggles now that I know that it's just part of living, instead of I'm having this anxiety because I'm too high at work, because I'm sneaking out and getting high at work, or I'm hungover from
Right.
staying up until 5 a.m., drinking until I pass out, and then waking up at 8 to go to work. I know I'm going to bed early, I'm taking my meds, and I'm still having anxiety and depression, and I can be honest about that. And so they helped me out at work. They gave me something easier to do. They piled all these responsibilities on me and said, you got to take these responsibilities away and give me back my entry level thing. And I feel so much better. I'm also grateful for all of you guys in my community, my family. Like, I'm not going to Christmas with my family next week. They're all getting together. They're all quarantining for 10 days and not seeing anybody else so they can get together. And my mom said, you can't do that, can you? And I was like, I can't really do that because I got to see the rest of my family. I got to hang out with my sponsor. We're having a potluck tomorrow. You know, that's my family too. So I'm really grateful for that. And, you know, I can make amends to my brother next Christmas.
That's awesome.
So thanks, I'll pass.
All right. Rusty, what's something that you're grateful for?
You know, I guess I'll sum it all up to just love. If I didn't, you know, I've had some beautiful experiences the last couple of years and some painful ones. But I would say that is the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced, whether it's giving love or receiving it. I mean, it has a warm feeling in a drug, like a drug when you're with somebody. I could literally feel the energy today. And I would say 10 years ago, if somebody put their hand on my shoulder, I've done it in a AA meeting or in a club or anywhere really, in a meeting.
Yeah.
I have told people, get your effing hand off of me. And I turn around and give them the meanest look I could, and they're like, sorry, man. I'm like, I don't like people touching me. I mean, to go from that to wanting to hug somebody and feeling just loved and loving somebody, it's a beautiful thing. I want to say one thing about, I just want to take a couple minutes, and I'm grateful for breathing. I'm grateful for love. I'm grateful. I don't think of too much I'm ungrateful for right now, right? But I want to touch, because it confused me for so long. The first couple steps, I was struggling with that. I used to say to myself, what do you mean I'm powerless? If you put $5 million on my kitchen table and a whiskey bottle next to it, and you told me I had to stay sober for 3 days, I bet you I could shake it out in my bedroom for that kind of money, right? Alcoholism is kind of funny how the ego controls you. But so my mind would have the capability of saying, well, I'm not powerless, because if I was, then I couldn't do that. And I knew that I could if I had to. So I was in a meeting, and some old timer yelled at me, which is fantastic. And he was mad at me for not explaining it the way he does, which is fantastic. Because all he was doing was quoting he was re-quoting the book, and there was 3 people in there that said clearly, I don't understand the first step. I don't understand. And I understood what they meant. Right? Until you intuitively feel it inside, it's difficult to get past it. I just want to explain the first step this way. I assume most of the people listening have been in love, right? I have been in love and been out of love. Depends on your age, but you probably have. And imagine that you're in a loving relationship and you're just madly in love with this gal. And she leaves you and she's not coming back. And you drive by her house to see if her car's there. And you call her phone number to hang up. And you check her Facebook account, right? And the only thing you need to understand is that you are powerless. She is not coming back, and there's nothing you can ever do about it. And it's the same thing with alcohol. You can reminisce, you can wander, you can do whatever you want. But until you truly understand that you're powerless over ever using this substance again, it's basically like a poison to you, and you look at it that way, you know what I mean? You are powerless over that, and there's nothing you will ever be able to do about it. Maybe 50 years in the future, maybe. They can put a brain chip in that secretes something and allows you to drink normal. But until you realize that you're powerless, well, I'll just say what happened to me. I got home after working with the sponsor, listened to a lady who was married to an alcoholic. I had never heard that before. And I got home, I hadn't slept for like 5 days. And I got home and put my hands in my head and said, my God, what have I done? That's after drinking for 30 years. And I kind of separated from myself, and I could see through my own bullshit, if you know what I mean, all my excuses. I didn't realize I was resisting quitting until that moment. And I went into my room, and I was able to relax and fall asleep for the first time in months. So understanding your powers, knowing you're powerless, and believing you're powerless, as we discussed earlier, two different things. Believing isn't the conclusion, but knowing you are is. In your psyche, right? You have to know that, like meeting God. But until you come to that conclusion, you have to wander, still seeking out that thrill or whatever. But yeah, I'm grateful for you guys. Thank you for having us tonight. It's been fun. You guys are fantastic. I think the program is entertaining because of you guys.
Thank you, Rusty.
Thanks, Rusty. Jason, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful that it's Friday and I don't have to work tomorrow.
Nice and easy.
I'm grateful that all next week I don't have to work. I can spend all of Christmas week with the family. You know, when I was younger, when I was a little kid, I was excited about getting toys and stuff like that. Now, as a dad of 3 little kids, it's even better to give gifts.
Right.
Oh my
Jason
gosh.
has 3 adorable kids.
Smart, too.
Yeah, I'm grateful for family, you know.
Nice.
I just want to leave it at that.
Well, Tad, what are you grateful for this week?
Oh, you beat
Yeah,
me
I
to
beat you
were-
to
were
it,
trying
brother.
to. So, like Matt had talked about, I'm grateful for that job. And I got that job from another addict reaching out to me and saying, anyone that needs a job in recovery, I'm being clear, anyone that's in, and I said me, and he said, oh shit, dude, call here. And then when I called him, they were like, well, I hear you do this and you work with a lot of guys. Do you know anyone that's worth a crap? And I was like, yeah, I do. The guy's standing right next to me. We're digging fence holes right now. And so I'm grateful for that. And right now I'm grateful for the desire to keep changing and aim for the sky and continue to do that. Dearest buddy Tim, what are you grateful for?
Well, buckle up, guys. Here we go.
Oh shit.
I've got a few things. First, I'm grateful for these connections we get to make. Prior to recovery, I was so involved in self. It's just it makes me make a face. It's so disgusting. And until this recovery, this new life, this blessed new life that I get to live, I'm just grateful. These connections we make in these rooms, doing these podcasts, through other friends in the program, it brings tears to my eyes to think about it. I'm being serious. That, like Tad was talking about, conversation last night we had. I get to be real. I get to not lie. I get to be honest with another fellow addict, a brother. I'm so grateful. This program's given that back to me. And at this point in my life, I credit it to working this program of recovery. And as I've said since week 1, is I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful that I have a family that is there for me no matter the mistakes I make, the ups, the downs. I have a family who's there for me, and I am beyond grateful for that. And extended family. Again, Katie, thank you for being here with us again another week. And let's go ahead and get to our wrap-up. Tad?
Hey, can we give an email address out?
You can.
My own?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's your own anonymity.
And Matt can type it on there too.
Yeah.
Let me know when.
Right now, Rusty.
Right now, Rusty.
All right. If anybody wants to talk about anything, really, or recovery or spirituality, anything you want to talk about, my email address is 411rusty@gmail.com. and I have free time in the evenings. I do not have a wife and kids at home or anything like J-Dog Extraordinaire. So 411rusty@gmail.com.
There we go. We're
So,
getting it
so
up.
if you're listening to this on the repeat, which a lot of people do, they will be putting that in the comments. So just look for it from 2218 Attitude for Gratitude live stream. Thanks everyone who gave us a shout out. We have still yet to do a buzzer beater, and I got to give a prep of the show tomorrow.
next
next week.
Friday.
And I just want to say, so next week is Christmas. We will be having a show on Christmas, and the following week is New Year's. And we will still, it's New Year's Day, not New Year's Eve, and we will still be having a show. So next week we're going to have JP and Rob on the show. Rob will be joining us again, our sponsor, and they're going to be talking about the Hope Dealers, talking about some Christmas stuff. It's going to be a great time.
Their sponsee family.
Yeah. So feel free to tune in on Christmas with us, especially if you don't have anything going on. So Tim, do the plug again.
You know what? I want to give out two different plugs, both related to 2218. The first one is, Jane in the Gratitude Cafe. I want to make sure you guys understand through our Facebook page, you can see her menu. It's excellent. $5, you're going to be filled up. And then if you want to donate, I believe that we have got some links put up here, but you can definitely donate through our Facebook. And other than that, I just am very grateful for you guys. Go ahead, Ted.
All right. Hey, I just want to say thanks. And here is the buzzer beater question. And just to clarify, this is a quick answer because we can go as late as we want, but so if you could 12-step any fictional character, who would it be? Jason,
Great.
go.
Deadpool.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, man. Deadpool.
Did he know the question in
I think
advance?
he might need a little help.
Yeah. Awesome. Rusty.
I want to say Deadpool.
No, you can't. It's already
Whole
taken.
Answer.
I know.
Who do you want to 12-step, Rusty?
Oh, I'm
From the hip.
confused,
From
man.
the hip.
Daffy Duck.
Tim.
No, you're up first.
No.
Okay, I want to, the hopeless fella I pass on the corner every time I come to my 2218.
Fictional character.
Oh.
Don't try and be all nostalgic. You're not special, Tim. You're not
Fictional.
unique.
Okay, who's on TV? You guys are jerks with this one. He used cartoon. He did Deadpool. Wolverine.
You're going to get stabbed. But Sid.
Fictional character.
I'll stick with Marvel and say Frank Castle, the Punisher.
Oh,
Frank Castle, the Punisher. I think I'm going to go with the hardest of all, Bruce Banner.
Bruce Banner. Do you have one, Eric? Eric?
No.
Fictional 12-step?
Nope.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank everyone for joining us tonight, and we love you all, and
See you on Christmas.
we'll see you on Christmas. Have a great night, guys.